Hi there. Welcome to NapTime History channel. Tonight we're stepping into the silk stockings of an 18th century gentleman, where every morning begins with your manservant drawing back heavy velvet curtains to reveal another day of slow, expensive self-destruction. You shuffle to your dressing table, squinting at your reflection in mercury-backed glass that's literally poisoning you with every glance, while your valet prepares the daily arsenal of lead-white face paint that'll eventually eat through your skin like acid. You probably won't survive past 50, but at least you'll look fashionably pale at your own funeral. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop a comment letting me know where you're listening from and what time it is there. I love seeing how far these bedtime stories travel. Let's settle in and get started. You're awakening in your mahogany bed, the kind that cost more than a working man's yearly wage, and already your body protests. The feather mattress, restuffed just last month, has developed those characteristic lumps that dig into your spine no matter how you position yourself. Your manservant, Thompson, has been waiting outside your door since 5 in the morning. It's now 7, and he enters with practiced silence, carrying your morning wash basin filled with rose water that's been sitting out all night, developing a nice film of dust and dead insects. The first assault on your health begins immediately. You splash your face with that questionable water, then Thompson produces your morning cosmetics. The ceruse, that pristine white lead paint that every gentleman worth his salt must wear, goes on first. You feel it settling into your pores, cool and heavy, while Thompson assures you that Lord Pemberton uses twice as much and hasn't died yet. Historians still argue whether gentlemen knew they were poisoning themselves or if they genuinely believed the apothecaries who swore lead was perfectly safe when mixed with vinegar. Next comes the rouge, made from cinnabar, which is essentially mercury sulfide, though you prefer not to think about that. You dab it on your cheeks and lips, achieving that consumptive look that's all the rage this season, the tingling sensation. That's just your skin beginning its slow deterioration. But fashion demands sacrifice, and nothing says, I have leisure time, quite like spending an hour painting yourself with toxic substances. Your shaving ritual presents its own dangers. Thompson sharpens the straight razor on a leather strop, and you hold perfectly still as he scrapes yesterday's stubble from your jaw. One sneeze, one sudden movement, and you'll be bleeding all over your nightshirt. The shaving soap, at least, is relatively harmless, just animal fat and wood ash, though it does leave your skin feeling like parchment. But wait, there's more torture to endure. Your teeth need attention, and the tooth powder Thompson presents contains ground coral, cuttlefish bone, and, because why not, more lead. You scrub vigorously with a cloth, tasting metal and grit, while your gums protest this daily abuse. Some newfangled dentists in London are recommending something called a toothbrush made from boar bristles, but that sounds positively barbaric. The morning headache that plagues you could be from the mercury in your sleeping cap worn to prevent head colds, or perhaps from the wallpaper in your bedroom, which contains arsenic to achieve that lovely green color. Your physician, Dr. Hartwell insists headaches are caused by an excess of blood in the brain and recommends regular bloodletting. You've scheduled your monthly bleeding for next Tuesday. Thompson now produces your morning tonic, a delightful mixture of brandy, ground pearls for virility, and a touch of laudanum to steady your nerves. You knock it back, feeling the opium beginning its familiar work, smoothing the edges of your growing anxiety about the day ahead. This little ritual will eventually lead to a dependency that'll have you consuming enough laudanum to fell a horse. But for now, it just makes the lead poisoning more bearable. Thompson wheels in the breakfast service on a silver cart that squeaks with every rotation, announcing your impending doom by dining etiquette. The array before you resembles a medieval torture chamber more than a morning meal. 17 pieces of cutlery gleam menacingly in the morning light, each one designated for a specific food item you're not entirely sure you'll even be served. You sink into your chair, already exhausted, knowing that using the wrong spoon for your soft-boiled egg could result in social exile faster than you can say, "Pass the marmalade." The breakfast room itself conspires against your comfort. Those fashionable tall windows that your architect insisted upon create a greenhouse effect by 8 in the morning, and you're already sweating through your first layer of clothing. The fireplace, lit year-round because God forbid a gentleman's breakfast room ever drop below tropical temperatures, adds another degree of misery. You dab at your forehead with a lace handkerchief, careful not to disturb the lead paint you just applied. Your wife enters, looking equally miserable in her morning dress, stays already cutting off her circulation. She takes her seat at the opposite end of the table, a distance of approximately 12 feet, because intimacy at breakfast is considered vulgar. You'll need to practically shout to have a conversation, but that's assuming either of you has the energy after navigating this culinary obstacle course. The first course arrives, bread. But not just any bread, no. This is a selection of 5 different types, each requiring its own specific knife. There's the manchette, white bread for the wealthy. The cheat bread, second-grade white. Something brown that Thompson assures you is fashionable in France. And 2 varieties you can't identify but dare not refuse. You select the manchette with the correct knife, second from the left, ivory handle, and wait for Thompson to butter it, because buttering your own bread would be shockingly middle class. Next comes the tea service, and here's where things get properly complicated. The tea itself costs more per pound than most servants make in a month, shipped from China in lead-lined containers that add a delightful metallic aftertaste. Your teacup, paper-thin porcelain that burns your fingers through your gloves, must be held just so, pinky neither in nor out, but suspended in social purgatory. The sugar comes in a solid cone that must be chipped with special tongs, and God help you if you take more than 2 lumps. That's the kind of excess that gets you labeled a colonial. The main breakfast courses begin their parade. First, the aforementioned soft-boiled eggs in silver egg cups, each requiring that specialized spoon with the mother-of-pearl handle. You tap the shell with scientific precision, too hard, and you'll spray yolk across the tablecloth, too soft, and you'll look incompetent. The proper technique, as demonstrated at Lord Ashworth's last week, involves a counterclockwise spiral tap followed by a clean decapitation of the egg's crown. Following the eggs comes an array of meats that would make a butcher weep: cold roast beef, tongue, yes, actual tongue, veal pie, and something Thompson calls collared head, which you prefer not to investigate too closely. Each meat demands its own fork and knife combination, and you must alternate between them in a specific order that you've never quite mastered. Your wife picks at a piece of toast, the only item ladies are permitted to eat with their fingers, while you wage war with a particularly tough piece of beef. The vegetables, if you can call them that, arrive swimming in butter and heavily salted. Historians still debate whether 18th century gentlemen ever actually tasted their food, or if the excessive seasoning was meant to mask the flavor of spoilage. You suspect both. The asparagus, imported at tremendous expense, has been boiled until it resembles green string, while the mushrooms float in a cream sauce so rich your gallbladder files a formal complaint. Between courses, you must engage in proper breakfast conversation, light topics only, nothing controversial or stimulating. The weather, dreadful. Your plans for the day, dreadful. And observations about the garden, also dreadful, consume 20 minutes while your food congeals. Your wife mentions that Lady Pemberton has taken to having breakfast in the French manner, café and a roll, and you both share a moment of scandalized silence at such continental degeneracy. The breakfast ordeal finally ends after 2.5 hours, and Thompson appears at your elbow to announce that your valet, Richards, awaits in your dressing room. You rise from the table, feeling approximately 3 stones heavier, and make the journey upstairs, where the real torture begins. Your dressing room, a monument to masculine suffering, contains enough fabric to sail a ship and enough buttons to drive a saint to madness. Richards has laid out your clothing in the precise order of application, a ritual that would make a Catholic Mass look casual. First comes the shirt, finest Holland linen that costs more than a laborer's monthly wage and feels like wearing expensive sandpaper. The collar, starched within an inch of its life, already begins its slow strangulation as Richards fastens it with a stock that might as well be a silk noose. You can feel your pulse throbbing against the restriction, each heartbeat a reminder that fashion literally takes your breath away. Next, the stockings. Silk for formal occasions, wool for everyday wear, though every day is relative when each pair costs enough to feed a family for a week. Richards rolls them up your calves with practiced precision, securing them with garters that cut off circulation to your feet within minutes. The embroidered clocks running up the sides must align perfectly, or you'll look like you dressed in the dark, which is essentially social suicide. The breeches come next, and here's where things get properly medieval. Made of doeskin or fine wool, they fit like a second skin. If your second skin were determined to crush your internal organs, Richards has to literally hoist you into them while you suck in your breakfast and pray the buttons hold. The fall front closure requires engineering skills to navigate when nature calls, which explains why so many gentlemen develop kidney complaints. Your waistcoat collection occupies an entire wall: silk, satin, brocade, embroidered with everything from flowers to fighting peacocks. Today, Richards selects a gold silk number with silver threading that weighs approximately as much as chainmail and provides similar flexibility. The 18 buttons must be fastened from bottom to top, never the reverse, and the fit should be tight enough that deep breathing becomes a distant memory. The coat. Oh, the coat. This architectural marvel of wool and suffering comes in a shade of blue that required crushing thousands of indigo plants and probably several colonial uprisings to achieve. The cut follows your torso with mathematical precision, which means any weight gain or loss requires an entirely new wardrobe. The cuffs, heavy with gold buttons and braid, drag your arms down like fashionable anchors. Richards brushes invisible specks from the surface while you practice the shallow breathing that'll get you through the day. But wait, we're not done destroying your body yet. The cravat demands its own ceremony. Richards produces a length of starched linen the size of a small tablecloth and begins the intricate folding process. There are 32 recognized ways to tie a cravat, each with its own social implications. The mathematical suggests you're an intellectual. The Osbaldiston indicates sporting interests, while the ton d'amour implies things better left unexamined. Richards opts for the waterfall, which requires your chin to remain at an angle that'll guarantee neck strain by noon. Your shoes present their own special hell, made of leather so thin you can feel individual pebbles through the soles. They feature heels that pitch you forward like you're perpetually walking downhill. The buckles, real silver, because anything less would be noticed and judged, must be polished to mirror brightness. Breaking in a new pair involves weeks of blisters, blood, and probably gangrene, but at least your feet look aristocratic while they're dying. The final touches arrive. Your wig will save that powdery nightmare for the next torture session. Your sword, purely decorative but still heavy enough to throw off your gait. And your snuff box, because no outfit is complete without an addiction accessory. Richards pins your watch to your waistcoat, a gold monstrosity that weighs enough to create permanent bruising, and hands you your walking stick, which you don't need but must carry, because empty hands suggest you might actually do something useful. Fully dressed, you can barely move. Sitting requires strategic planning, bending is impossible, and forget about any sudden movements. You waddle to the mirror for final inspection, noting with satisfaction that you look exactly like every other gentleman of your station, expensively uncomfortable and comfortably dying. Richards approaches with the powder bag, and you steel yourself for what's essentially voluntary suffocation. The hair powder, a delightful mixture of wheat flour, rice starch, and occasionally ground orris root for scent, must be applied liberally to achieve that fashionable gray-white look that suggests you're either very distinguished or very deceased. He drapes a silk cone around your shoulders to protect your coat, though really, what's a little more powder on top of the arsenic in your waistcoat dye? The powder bellows looks like a torture device, because that's essentially what it is. Richards begins pumping, creating clouds of fine white dust with each squeeze. You hold your breath as long as possible, but eventually you must inhale, and the powder immediately coats your throat and lungs. That persistent cough that's been plaguing London's gentlemen? Definitely not related to inhaling flour several times a day, according to physicians who coincidentally wear very small wigs. Your natural hair, What's left of it after years of this treatment has been growing out for the specific purpose of holding powder. Richards combs pomade through it first, a mixture of bear grease and beef marrow that's been sitting in a jar since last Tuesday and smells exactly like you'd expect. The theory is that the grease helps the powder stick, though it also helps attract every fly within a 3-mile radius during summer months. Now comes the artistry. Richards sculpts your hair into the fashionable style of the day, which currently involves creating 2 sausage-shaped rolls above your ears called buckles. These must be perfectly symmetrical, or you'll look like you've been struck by lightning on one side. He uses heated curling irons that occasionally singe your scalp, but beauty is pain, and third-degree burns are a small price to pay for properly rolled side hair. The powder application continues for another 20 minutes. By now, the dressing room looks like it's been hit by a flour mill explosion. You can taste wheat in the back of your throat, and your eyes water continuously, but Richards assures you this is perfectly normal. Some gentlemen have taken to wearing glass cones over their faces during powdering, but that's considered rather effeminate unless you're actually dying of consumption. Speaking of consumption, let's discuss the perfume situation, because you bathe perhaps once a month if you're unusually fastidious, and because your clothes are rarely washed. It ruins the fabric, don't you know? You must mask your natural aroma with something stronger. Your perfumer, Monsieur Dubois, has created a special blend just for you: ambergris, whale vomit, musk, deer secretions, and civet, cat anal glands, with top notes of rose and orange blossom to really confuse the senses. You apply this liberally to your handkerchief, your clothes, your wig, and particularly to those areas where perspiration tends to concentrate. The resulting miasma could fell a horse at 20 paces, but at least it's an expensive miasma. Your wife has her own signature scent involving jasmine and virgin's milk, which historians still debate the origin of. And when you're both fully perfumed, rooms must be aired for hours after you leave. The final powder goes on your face, applied with a massive puff that Richards wields like a weapon. This isn't the lead-based ceruse from this morning. No, this is pure rice powder designed to set your makeup and give you that fashionable matte finish that says, "I definitely don't sweat like a common laborer." The powder immediately cakes in every line and crevice, aging you approximately 15 years, but in a socially acceptable way. Your morning toilette now complete. Only 3 hours after rising, you're ready to face the day. Except ready might be overstating it. You can barely turn your head thanks to the cravat, barely breathe thanks to the powder, barely walk thanks to the shoes, and barely think thanks to the laudanum, but you look magnificent, like a perfectly preserved corpse that's been teaching itself to walk. Richards gives you a final dusting with his powder brush, ensuring you leave a small cloud with every movement, like an aristocratic pigpen. This constant powder shedding means you'll need touch-ups throughout the day, so your pocket powder box goes in your coat, along with your perfume bottle, snuff box, pocket watch, calling cards, and a small pistol, because highway robbers don't care how well dressed their victims are. You descend the main staircase, leaving a trail of powder like an extremely well-dressed slug, ready to begin the day's social torture. The calling card ritual awaits. That Byzantine system of social interaction that makes an international diplomacy look straightforward. Your card case, sterling silver, because anything less marks you as arriving, contains approximately 50 cards in various sizes, each with its own specific purpose and proper usage that you've never quite mastered despite years of practice. Thompson hands you the morning's received cards on a silver salver. Lady Pemberton has left her card with the upper right corner folded, which means something. You can never remember if that's condolences, congratulations, or an invitation to her Tuesday salon. Your wife would know, but she's already departed for her own morning calls, leaving you to navigate these social hieroglyphics alone. There's also a card from Sir Reginald Ashworth with the entire right side folded, which either means he's leaving town or declaring war. The code changes seasonally. Your own calling schedule for the day reads like a military campaign. First, you must return Lord Blackwood's call from last Thursday, but not too promptly or you'll seem eager, which is worse than being rude. Then there's the obligatory call on your second cousin who's just arrived from Bath, though you'd rather have your teeth pulled without laudanum. The new family across the square requires a welcoming call, but only after they've been in residence for exactly 2 weeks. Call earlier and you're presumptuous, later and you're negligent. The carriage awaits. Another instrument of slow death. Your coachman, Peters, helps you navigate the step up without splitting your breeches, a genuine concern given this morning's breakfast. Inside, the seats are upholstered in velvet that's been absorbing the perfume, powder, and general funk of aristocratic bodies for the past decade. You settle in, immediately feeling your spine compress as the carriage lurches forward over cobblestones that haven't been repaired since the last Charles was on the throne. At Lord Blackwood's townhouse, you alight, carefully, always carefully, and approach the door. The butler takes your card on yet another silver salver. Apparently, it's salvering all the way down, and you wait the requisite 3 minutes. This is the critical moment. Will you be received, or will the butler return with your card and the dreaded phrase, "His lordship is not at home"? Everyone knows his lordship is probably upstairs in his banyan eating kippers, but "not at home" is the polite fiction that prevents actual dueling. Success, you're admitted to the drawing room where the real endurance test begins. The chairs, designed by someone who clearly hated the human spine, force you into a posture that would make a finishing school mistress weep with joy. You perch on the edge, your coattails carefully arranged to avoid wrinkles, your sword clanking against the chair leg with every subtle movement. Lord Blackwood appears after the socially acceptable 15-minute delay, looking as uncomfortable as you feel in his matching tortuous outfit. The conversation follows its prescribed pattern. Weather, still dreadful. Health, mustn't complain. Politics, carefully avoiding anything actually political. And that new novel everyone's pretending to have read, but obviously hasn't. You sip tea from cups so delicate they'd shatter if you sneezed, while making observations that dance around saying anything of substance. I hear Lord Pemberton has taken up agriculture. You venture. Indeed, replies Blackwood, and you both nod sagely as if this exchange contained profound meaning. 20 minutes is the maximum acceptable length for a morning call. Stay longer, and you're imposing. Leave earlier, and you're insulting. You've become expert at watching the mantle clock without appearing to watch it, a skill that should be taught at Oxford. At precisely 19 minutes, you make noises about not wanting to monopolize his lordship's valuable time. He makes counter noises about the pleasure of your company, and you both know this dance as well as any minuet. Back in the carriage, your lower back already screaming from the chair, you proceed to your cousin's residence. She's one of those exhausting relatives who insists on actual conversation, asking probing questions about your health, your marriage, and whether you've noticed you're slowly dying from your lifestyle. You deflect with practiced ease, turning every query into an observation about the weather, which has become your primary defensive weapon in the war of social interaction. The afternoon brings the true test of your physical endurance. Dancing practice at Lady Worthington's Academy. Your dancing master, Monsieur Beaumont, awaits with the grim determination of a man who's made his fortune teaching the English gentry how to move without looking like they're having a medical emergency. You enter the ballroom already sweating through your powder, knowing the next 2 hours will be a special kind of purgatory involving precise footwork, mathematical arm positions, and enough cardiovascular exertion to fell a cart horse. The minuet, that stately dance of death, requires you to hold your arms in positions that would make a torturer take notes. Your right arm must extend at exactly 45 degrees while your left hand rests on your sword hilt, except during the reverence when both arms must sweep in opposing arcs while you bow deep enough to show respect, but not so deep you lose your wig. Monsieur Beaumont demonstrates with the fluid grace of someone whose joints haven't been calcified by decades of rich food and poor posture. You partner with Mrs. Ashford, whose corset is laced so tight her face has achieved a delightful purple hue before the music even starts. Together, you must execute a series of steps that require remembering whether you're in 3/4 time or 6/8 time while maintaining conversation about absolutely nothing. Lovely weather for January, you wheeze as you perform the pas de bourrée. Indeed, though I hear February will be worse. She gasps back, nearly fainting on the contretemps, the dance floor, polished to a mirror to shine with beeswax, becomes increasingly treacherous as you all leak powder with every movement. It's like dancing on flour-covered ice, and Monsieur Beaumont's sharp non, non, non punctuates every slip. Your shoes, those torture devices with smooth leather soles, provide exactly 0 traction. Lord Pemberton actually goes down during a particularly ambitious balance, taking Lady Pemberton with him in a cloud of wig powder and profanity that Monsieur pretends not to understand. Between dances, you're allowed exactly 3 minutes to recover, during which you fan yourself with an ivory fan. Yes, men carry fans too. Don't look so shocked, and pretend you're not about to have an apoplectic fit. Your heart pounds against your restrictive waistcoat like a caged animal, and you can feel your pulse in your temples, neck, and possibly your teeth. Dr. Hartwell claims dancing is excellent for the constitution, though he notably never attends balls himself. The country dances come next, which somehow manage to be worse. These require actual vigor, hopping, skipping, and what Monsieur optimistically calls gay abandonment. You gallop down the line with Mrs. Pemberton, who whispers, "I think I'm dying," as you pass, to which you can only nod in sympathetic agreement because speech is currently beyond your capabilities. The gay Gordon involves so much spinning that two participants have to excuse themselves to vomit discreetly into Chinese vases. But wait, there's more. The cotillion demands you remember not just your own steps, but everyone else's, as you weave in and out of formation like an extremely well-dressed military maneuver. One wrong turn and the entire set collapses like a house of cards. Young Mr. Fitzgerald, new to society, turns left instead of right and creates a 12-person pile-up that Monsieur Beaumont will be using as a cautionary tale for the next decade. Your clothes, never designed for movement, let alone athletic endeavor, begin their betrayal. The coat seams strain with each arm raise, the breeches threaten to split with every plie, and your wig slowly rotates counterclockwise until your left buckle is practically facing backwards. The cravat, already restricting your breathing, now feels like an actual garrote as perspiration causes the starch to constrict further. Historians still debate whether the excessive death rate among 18th century aristocrats was due to their lifestyle or their dancing. You're living proof it's both. As the lesson finally ends, you bow to your last partner, Lady Ashworth, who appears to be having some sort of cardiac event, but maintains her smile because collapsing in public is simply not done. You've survived another dance practice. Though survived is generous, you're more accurately still technically alive. The dinner invitation for 8 o'clock means you'll be eating sometime around midnight if you're lucky. You arrive at Lord and Lady Harrington's townhouse at precisely 8:20, fashionably late, but not insultingly so, to find 40 other guests milling about in the drawing room like expensively dressed cattle waiting for slaughter. The preparatory drinking has already begun, with footmen circulating with glasses of ratafia and stronger spirits for those who know what's coming. The dining room doors finally open at 9:30, and then begins the complex dance of precedence that makes your earlier minuet look like child's play. Who enters first? Who sits where? Lady Pemberton nearly comes to blows with Mrs. Ashworth over who takes precedence. She's the wife of a baronet, but he's the younger son of an earl, and somebody mentions the Treaty of Utrecht for reasons that escape you entirely. You're eventually seated between a deaf dowager who shouts every observation and a young lady who communicates entirely in meaningful fan movements. The table stretches approximately the length of a cricket pitch, set with enough silver to finance a small war. Each place setting contains 23 pieces of cutlery, 4 glasses of varying sizes, and a napkin large enough to use as a sail. The salt cellars alone could feed a working family for a year, and the centerpiece, a 3-foot silver sculpture of Neptune fighting a sea monster, blocks your view of half the table, which might be a blessing. The first course arrives, soup, but not just soup, 3 different soups, served simultaneously, because choosing is for commoners. You've got white soup, veal stock with ground almonds, brown soup, beef and Madeira, and something green that might be pea or might be pond scum. You must take a spoonful of each, using the correct spoon, third from the right, silver with the acorn pattern, while maintaining conversation with the shouting dowager about her murdered sleep. 20 minutes later, the fish course appears. Turbot the size of a small child, salmon in various states of manipulation, eels that still look disturbingly mobile, and oysters that have been traveling since Tuesday and smell like it. The fish knife, which you're 60% sure is the one with the mother of pearl handle, must be wielded with surgical precision to avoid flinging fish onto the young lady beside you, who's frantically fanning "I find the mackerel overwhelming" in semaphore. The removes come next, massive joints of meat that require carving at the table by whichever gentleman is nearest and least drunk. Lord Harrington attacks a roast beef with the determination of someone storming a fortress, spraying juices in a 3-foot radius while discussing the situation in the colonies. You're served a slab that could shoe a horse, accompanied by Yorkshire pudding that has the consistency of leather and probably similar nutritional value. Between each course comes 20 minutes of conversation while footmen clear and reset. Your corset, yes, men wear stays too. Don't look shocked, digs into your ribs as your stomach expands beyond its architectural limits. The dowager has moved on to shouting about her disappointing nephew, while the young lady fans increasingly desperate messages about needing air. You're trapped between them like a well-dressed hostage, nodding and smiling while calculating how many more courses you can survive. The side dishes arrive in waves: pigeon pie, duck with oranges, partridges stuffed with partridges, because why not? A ham glazed with enough sugar to induce diabetes on sight. The vegetables, if you can call them that, swim in butter and cream until they're essentially meat-flavored soup. You take microscopic portions of everything because refusing any dish insults your hostess, and Lady Harrington has a memory like an elephant and the social influence to match. We're only halfway through, and already your digestive system has filed formal protests. The wine, a different variety with each course, combines with your morning laudanum to create a sensation of floating slightly above your chair, or maybe that's just the lack of oxygen from your cravat. The candles, hundreds of them, have raised the room temperature to approximately that of the 7th circle of hell, and in everyone's makeup is sliding off their faces like well-bred avalanches. By the time the roasted meats conclude around midnight, half the party has retired to the drawing room for digestive distress, which everyone politely ignores. You remain trapped at the table, watching in horror as footmen clear away the carnage, only to reveal more courses lurking beneath silver domes like edible threats. Your stomach, already stretched beyond human capacity, sends urgent distress signals that you smother with another glass of claret. The young lady beside you has given up fanning and simply stares into the middle distance with the hollow eyes of a war veteran. Lord Harrington rises, swaying slightly, to propose the health of the king, which means everyone must drain their glasses and pretend they're not actively dying. The toast complete, he announces it's time for cards and hazard in the gaming room, because apparently dinner was just the warm-up for the real self-destruction. You follow the gentleman like sheep to slaughter, leaving the ladies to their own mysterious tortures in the drawing room. The gaming room exists in a permanent fog of tobacco smoke so thick you could carve it. Your eyes immediately water, adding to the streaming caused by powder and perfume. The hazard table dominates the center, surrounded by men who've already loosened their cravats and adopted the glassy-eyed stare of the committed gambler. You recognize Lord Blackwood from this morning's call. He's down 3,000 pounds, and it's not even 1 o'clock. You settle at the whist table, the tamest option available, though tame is relative when the stakes start at 50 pounds a rubber. Your partner, Sir Reginald Ashworth, has consumed enough wine to pickle a navy and keeps forgetting which suit is trump. Across from you, the Pemberton brothers play with the grim determination of men who've already mortgaged one estate this month and are eyeing a second. The coffee arrives, thick, Turkish, and strong enough to wake the dead, which is fortunate because several players appear to be attempting exactly that. You gulp it down, feeling your heart rhythm develop interesting new patterns. Someone mentions that coffee is supposed to counteract alcohol, though looking around the room at men who are simultaneously drunk, caffeinated, and in debt suggests this theory needs work. At the hazard table, young Mr. Fitzgerald, he of the dancing disaster, stakes his matched grays on a single throw. The dice clatter across the felt like tiny harbingers of doom, and suddenly he no longer owns horses. He laughs with the high, brittle sound of someone whose father is going to murder him, then immediately borrows 500 pounds from a moneylender lurking in the corner like a well-dressed vulture. Your whist game deteriorates as Sir Reginald begins seeing cards that aren't there and playing accordingly. The 7 of hearts, then he announces triumphantly, slapping down what is clearly a spade. You lose the rubber, then another, hemorrhaging money with the steady reliability of a slit artery. The mathematical probability of losing this consistently is actually impressive, though that's little comfort as you sign another vowel of debt. The air grows thicker as more pipes and cigars join the atmospheric assault. Your throat feels like you've been gargling sand, and the coffee has transformed your heartbeat into something resembling a military tattoo. Around 3 in the morning, Lord Pemberton the Elder collapses face first onto the faro table, which everyone agrees is nature's way of saying he's done for the evening. 2 footmen carry him out, while the game continues around his absence. You escape to the necessary, which involves navigating dark corridors while desperately maintaining continence. The chamber pot, mercifully empty, receives your offering while you contemplate how many of your internal organs might be dissolving. The wine, coffee, and various dinner courses wage war in your stomach with the vigor of opposing armies. You steady yourself against the wall, wondering if this is how you die, not in glorious battle, but in Lord Harrington's water closet. Returning to find your whist table commandeered by serious players, you slump into a chair near the fireplace, which someone has stoked to inferno levels, despite the room already resembling Hades. Young Fitzgerald has now lost his watch, his sword, and quite possibly his soul. He's writing IOUs with the desperate creativity of a poet, promising everything from his unborn children to his library's third edition Shakespeare's. Dawn creeps through the windows like an unwelcome creditor as you finally escape the gaming room, down 600 pounds and most of your will to live. The theater engagement at Drury Lane tonight, or rather, this evening, since it's already tomorrow, looms before you like yet another Sisyphean torment. You stumble home through streets where industrious merchants are already opening shops, looking at you with the barely concealed disgust reserved for aristocrats who've been awake since yesterday. After 4 hours of fitful sleep, haunted by dreams of dancing cards and homicidal oysters, Thompson wakes you for your afternoon levee. Yes, you're receiving visitors while still in your bedchamber, because apparently privacy died sometime around the Restoration. Your barber arrives to repair whatever's left of your hair, your tailor to measure you for a coat you'll wear twice, and various hangers-on who watch you dress like it's public entertainment. The evening's theater expedition requires full formal dress again, which means repeating this morning's torture, but with yesterday's bruises. Richards produces your purple silk suit, the color achieved through crushing thousands of Mediterranean snails, because of course it was. Your opera glass, essential for pretending to watch the stage, while actually observing who's sitting with whom in other boxes, goes in your pocket along with more snuff, more perfume, and a fresh supply of laudanum for when things get desperate. The journey to Drury Lane in your sedan chair provides new opportunities for spinal damage. Your carriers, clearly vindictive about something, manage to find every pothole and loose cobblestone between Mayfair and Covent Garden. You grip the sides as they lurch through the streets, powder cascading from your wig with each jolt, creating a small snowstorm inside the confined space. Arriving at the theater requires navigating a gauntlet of orange sellers, prostitutes, pickpockets, and other aristocrats, all equally dangerous in their own ways. The orange girls press their wares aggressively, fresh china oranges, your lordship, while their confederates attempt to relieve you of your watch. You clutch your sword hilt, though drawing it would require flexibility your outfit doesn't permit. Inside, the theater assault begins immediately. The lobby, packed tighter than your breeches, forces intimate contact with every other theater-goer's perfume, powder, and perspiration. The combined miasma creates its own weather system, and you fight through it toward your box, accidentally inhaling someone's snuff cloud and sneezing explosively onto a dowager's décolletage. Your box, which costs more annually than a comfortable townhouse, provides an excellent view of other boxes and a theoretical view of the stage. You settle onto a chair designed by someone who clearly believed comfort led to moral decay. The pre-show entertainment consists of watching the pit, where the middle sort and servants create their own drama by throwing things at each other and occasionally at the stage. The play begins at 6, or rather, people stop talking quite as loudly at 6 while actors attempt to perform. Tonight's offering is The Tragedy of Something or Other, not that anyone's paying attention. Lady Pemberton in the opposite box appears to be having an assignation with someone who definitely isn't Lord Pemberton, while below in the pit, a fight breaks out over whether Shakespeare wrote his own plays or whether it matters. Between acts, your box fills with visitors because watching the play would be middle class. Lord Ashworth squeezes in to gossip about last night's losses. Mrs. Harrington arrives to ensure you're seen, acknowledging her social triumph, and various young men drift through to be seen drifting through. The temperature in your box rises to tropical levels as bodies press together, everyone leaking powder and perfume in equal measure. The orange you purchase, mostly to make the seller go away, costs a week's wages and tastes like it's been in storage since the last King James. You peel it with gloves on, because touching food with bare hands is practically barbaric, spraying citrus oil onto your purple silk where it will leave permanent spots you'll pretend are part of the design. Act 3 brings actual drama, though not on stage. Someone in the gallery throws a bottle that narrowly misses the lead actor, who responds with an impromptu soliloquy about the parentage of gallery patrons. This leads to more bottles, some rotten fruit, and eventually a dead cat, though historians still debate whether the cat was thrown or simply fell from the rafters where it expired from the atmosphere. The play mercifully ends around 11, though 2 encores and a spontaneous hornpipe by the lead actress extend your suffering until midnight. Your head pounds from the noise, the smells, and the effort of maintaining consciousness in air that's more powder than oxygen. Tomorrow you're scheduled for your monthly bloodletting with Dr. Hartwell, because clearly what your body needs after this week of systematic destruction is to have several pints of blood removed for balance. You arrive at Dr. Hartwell's consulting rooms in Harley Street feeling like death warmed over, which he diagnoses as an excess of choleric humors requiring immediate evacuation. His surgery resembles a torture chamber decorated by someone with delusions of respectability. Leather chairs stained with mysterious fluids, jars containing things that were once inside people, and an array of cutting implements that would make a butcher nervous. The good doctor examines you with the confidence of someone who learned medicine from books written before anyone understood circulation. He checks your pulse, declaring it too quick, examines your tongue, pronouncing it excessively coated, and prods your abdomen while making thoughtful noises that could mean anything from interesting to hopeless. His breath, heavy with gin and breakfast kidneys, wafts over you as he delivers his diagnosis. You need bleeding, purging, and possibly some light mercury treatment. The bleeding chair looks like a throne, designed by someone who really hated monarchs. You sit while Dr. Hartwell produces his fleams, multi-bladed instruments that would make excellent murder weapons, and selects the appropriate vein. He ties a tourniquet around your upper arm with enthusiasm that suggests personal vendetta, then makes the incision with the casual confidence of someone who's never heard of infection. The blood flows into a pewter bowl with disturbing enthusiasm, and Dr. Hartwell nods approvingly. "Look at that color," he says, as if you're wine tasting rather than slowly exsanguinating. Far too dark. Clear signs of putrefaction in the liver will take at least 20 ounces, possibly 30 if you don't faint. You watch your life force drain away while he discusses his theories about how blood goes bad like milk if left in the body too long. 20 ounces later, you're the color of your own face powder and seeing interesting sparkles at the edges of your vision, Dr. Hartwell declares the procedure a success, though success seems a relative term when you can't feel your extremities. He bandages your arm with linen that's been used before, waste not, want not, and prescribes his special tonic to restore your strength. The tonic, which he mixes personally, contains enough mercury to thermometer a small village, plus antimony, lead acetate, and something he calls viper's wine, but won't elaborate on. You drink it down, immediately feeling your teeth go numb, which he assures you is perfectly normal and definitely not a sign of heavy metal poisoning. Take twice daily until your gums turn blue, then reduce to once daily, he instructs, as if blue gums are a reasonable treatment goal. But wait, there's more. Your digestion clearly needs attention, so Dr. Hartwell prescribes his patented purging powder, cleans you out like a chimney sweep, he promises, which sounds more like a threat than a benefit. The powder contains jalap root, calomel, more mercury, and something that smells like rotting eggs, but is apparently sovereign for the bowels. You stagger home, clutching your medicines and trying not to bleed through your bandages onto your coat. The sedan chair carriers take one look at your complexion and double their pace, probably hoping to deliver you before you expire, and they have to explain a corpse. Every jostle sends waves of nausea through your purged and poisoned system, and you clutch the laudanum bottle like a lifeline. Back home, Thompson helps you to bed while trying not to look alarmed at your corpse-like pallor. You take your prescribed dose of mercury tonic, chase it with laudanum, and lie back to enjoy the fascinating hallucinations that come from mixing opiates with heavy metals. The room spins in interesting patterns, while your stomach debates whether to rebel against the purging powder or simply surrender to the inevitable. Dr. Hartwell has scheduled you for another bleeding next month, plus potential issues with your spleen that might require some experimental treatments involving electricity and ground beetles. You drift off to poisoned sleep, wondering if perhaps the lower orders have the right idea with their inability to afford medical care. Your recovery from Dr. Hartwell's ministrations is interrupted by the arrival of an urgent message. Your presence is required at your estate in Kent. This means traveling, that special form of torture reserved for those wealthy enough to afford private carriages, but not wealthy enough to simply stay home forever. Thompson begins packing your traveling trunks with the grim efficiency of someone preparing for a military campaign, which isn't far from the truth. The travel preparations alone could kill a weaker man. Your traveling clothes must be practical, yet still maintain your status, which means they're exactly as uncomfortable as your regular clothes, but in sturdier fabrics. The traveling cloak, lined with fur that's been shedding since 1687, weighs approximately as much as a small child and smells like wet dog even when dry. Your boots, specially made for the journey, feature slightly thicker soles that will still ensure you feel every pebble on every inn floor. The carriage, despite costing more than most people's houses, offers all the comfort of a medieval torture device. The seats, stuffed with horsehair that's compressed into concrete hardness, face each other at a distance, calculated to ensure your knees knock against your traveling companions with every bump. The windows, which don't quite seal, allow refreshing gusts of rain, snow, or dust depending on the season. Today promises freezing rain, because of course it does. You set off at dawn, already nauseated from the motion and the lingering effects of Dr. Hartwell's purging powder. The roads outside London resemble plowed fields more than thoroughfares, and your spine compresses with each pothole. Your traveling companion, Mr. Fitzgerald, yes, the one who lost his horses at hazard, maintains a stream of consciousness complaint about his father's reaction to his debts while you focus on not vomiting into your hat. 4 hours into the journey, you stop at an inn that advertises gentle lodgings for persons of quality, which translates to will rob you politely. The innkeeper, recognizing wealth when he sees it sweating through face powder, charges you London prices for country slop. The dining room, filled with tobacco smoke and the aroma of unwashed travelers, offers a choice between mutton that died of natural causes or beef of suspicious origin. The necessary at the inn provides new adventures in hygiene. A wooden seat over a pit that hasn't been emptied since the Glorious Revolution, decorated with helpful graffiti about various lords' anatomical shortcomings. You hover rather than sit, performing acrobatics that your dancing master would approve of, while trying not to think about what's lurking below. The absence of anything resembling paper means sacrificing another handkerchief to necessity. Back in the carriage, fortified by terrible wine and worse food, you encounter the day's first highway hazard. Not highwaymen yet, but a merchant's wagon overturned in the mud, blocking the entire road. Your coachman engages in negotiations with the merchant that involve extensive profanity, theological speculation about each other's parentage, and eventually money changing hands. 2 hours later, you're moving again, having traveled approximately 50 yards. The afternoon brings actual highwaymen, though they're almost disappointingly polite. Your money or your life, good sirs, says their leader, who's wearing a better cravat than yours. You hand over your purse with practiced ease. This is the third time this year, while Mr. Fitzgerald tries to explain he's already lost everything at cards. The highwaymen seem genuinely sympathetic to his gambling problems, while relieving you both of watches, rings, and dignity. Terribly sorry for the inconvenience, the leader adds, tipping his hat. Might I suggest taking the Dover Road next time? We're focusing our efforts on the Kent Road this season. You thank him for the advice. Everyone bows politely, and they disappear into the woods like well-mannered phantoms. Highway robbery has become so routine that there's actually an etiquette to it. Night falls when you're still 20 miles from your destination, forcing a stop at another inn, this one advertising clean beds, which definitely means they're not. Your room, which costs as much as a month's rent in London, features a bed that's clearly hosted more wildlife than a royal menagerie. The sheets, gray with age and use, crunch when you touch them. Something scurries in the walls with disturbing regularity. The monthly bathing ritual awaits upon your return to London, and Thompson has been preparing for this ordeal like a general planning a siege. The copper tub, dragged up from the cellar by 4 struggling footmen, sits in your dressing room like an instrument of aquatic torture. Heating enough water requires the kitchen staff to work since dawn, hauling kettles up 3 flights of stairs while muttering imprecations against the gentry's bizarre obsession with immersion. You stand shivering in your banyan while Thompson tests the water temperature with the solemnity of an alchemist checking for poison. Too hot, and you'll emerge looking like a boiled lobster. Too cold, and you'll catch your death of pneumonia, though honestly, the odds of dying seem high either way. The last gentleman who bathed twice in 1 month was Sir Edmund Rothby, and he died of lung fever within the week, which everyone agrees was divine punishment for excessive cleanliness. The undressing process reveals the accumulated damage of the past month. Layers of powder, pomade, and perfume have created a sort of aristocratic shellac over your skin. Your valet produces a scraping knife, yes, like you're a barnacle-encrusted ship, to remove the worst of it before you enter the water. Patches of rash from the lead cosmetics compete with mysterious bruises from corsets and sword belts, creating a Jackson Pollock of upper-class suffering across your torso. Into the tub you go, immediately discovering that warm is a relative concept when you're dealing with servants who've been hauling water for 3 hours and have lost all sympathy. The temperature hovers somewhere between freshly melted ice and tepid soup, with occasional pockets of scalding water that suggest someone just dumped a kettle without stirring. You sink in up to your chin, feeling months of carefully cultivated dirt and powder dissolve into gray soup. Thompson approaches with the washing implements, a cloth that's seen better centuries, and soap made from tallow and wood ash that smells like a funeral pyre. The lye content is high enough to strip paint, which is fortunate since that's essentially what you're covered in. He scrubs with the enthusiasm of someone scouring a particularly stubborn pot, while you wonder if you'll have any skin left by the time he's finished. Your hair presents its own challenges. Months of powder, pomade, and perspiration have created a substance that science hasn't yet classified. Thompson works in stages, first scraping off the outer crust, then applying a mixture of egg whites and brandy that's supposed to cut through the grease but mostly just makes you smell like a tavern breakfast. The scrubbing that follows feels like he's trying to reach your brain through your scalp. Historians still argue about whether the fear of bathing was justified or just convenient excuse for laziness. Sitting in rapidly cooling water while every window rattles with February wind, you understand the logic. Your teeth chatter rhythmically as Thompson rinses your hair with water that was definitely hot when it left the kitchen, but has traveled through enough cold corridors to achieve maximum discomfort. The bath water, by now, has turned the color and consistency of Thames mud. Various unidentifiable objects float on the surface. Is that a louse or just a clump of powder? You decide not to investigate too closely. Rising from the tub requires assistance because your muscles have seized from the cold, and you stand dripping and shivering while Thompson throws a linen sheet around you that's approximately as warming as wrapping yourself in wet paper. The drying process involves standing before a fire that's either too hot on one side or accomplishing nothing on the other. You rotate slowly, like an aristocratic rotisserie, while Thompson rubs you down with towels that have the absorbency of fine sandpaper. Your skin, shocked by its first contact with actual water in weeks, responds by turning various shades of red and developing interesting textures. Now comes the critical part: reapplying enough scent to mask the fact that you won't bathe again for at least a month. Thompson produces an arsenal of perfumes, powders, and pomades to rebuild your protective shell of aristocratic aroma. The fact that you're clean underneath is almost irrelevant. What matters is that you smell expensive, even if that smell is primarily deceased flowers mixed with whale excretions. Night falls, and with it comes the promise of sleep, that theoretical respite from your daily torments. Your bedchamber, a monument to expensive discomfort, awaits with its own special horrors. The bed hangings, heavy velvet that hasn't been cleaned since Queen Anne's time, trap every unpleasant smell from the past decade while simultaneously blocking any hope of fresh air. You pull them closed anyway, because the alternative is freezing to death. The fire has died to embers and won't be rekindled until morning. Your nightshirt, finest Holland linen, just like your day shirt, has been warming by the fire and is approximately body temperature for the 30 seconds it takes to put it on. After that, it becomes a cold, clammy shroud that sticks to your freshly bathed skin. The nightcap, essential to prevent head colds and brain fever, contains enough mercury in its felted wool to ensure interesting dreams and possible neurological damage. Into bed you climb, immediately sinking into a mattress that's developed the topography of a small mountain range. The feathers have migrated to the edges over the years, leaving a person-shaped valley in the center that forces you into a permanent fetal position. The sheets, changed monthly, whether they need it or not, feel like they're made from compressed sawdust. You pull up the coverlets, all 7 of them, because heating bedrooms is for peasants, and feel their collective weight compress your ribcage. But sleep? Oh no, that would be too simple. First comes the nightly serenade of your own body rebelling against the day's abuses. Your stomach, still processing dinner from 8 hours ago, gurgles like a demonic fountain. Your joints, compressed and contorted by fashion, crack and pop as you try to find a position that doesn't actively hurt. The bloodletting site throbs in time with your heartbeat, reminding you that you voluntarily paid someone to open your veins. Then there's the wildlife. Your bed, despite the best efforts of servants, hosts a thriving ecosystem. Bedbugs emerge from the woodwork like tiny vampires, ready for their nightly feast. You feel them marching across your skin with military precision, setting up camp in the warmest spots. Fleas from your own clothes have made the transition to the bedding, creating an itching symphony that would drive a saint to profanity. The sounds of a London night filter through your windows, which don't quite close because the house has settled unevenly since 1680. Carriages rattle past with irregular frequency, their wheels and horses' hooves creating a percussion section from hell. Someone's fighting in the street, they usually are, and a woman's screaming about either murder or fish prices. It's hard to tell which. The night watchman calls the hour with lung power that suggests he's personally offended by sleep. Your bladder, filled with evening wine and Dr. Hartwell's tonic, demands attention around 2 in the morning. This means a journey across freezing floorboards to the chamber pot, trying not to wake Thompson, who sleeps outside your door and will insist on helping if he hears you moving. The pot, porcelain and decorated with pastoral scenes that seem mocking at this moment, is ice cold against your skin. You relieve yourself while your teeth chatter rhythmically, wondering if anyone's ever actually frozen to death while urinating. Back in bed, now fully awake and colder than before, you reach for the laudanum bottle on your nightstand. Just a few drops to quiet the stomach, stop the itching, and hopefully achieve unconsciousness. The opium slides down your throat with familiar warmth, and you wait for the edges of reality to soften. This nightly dance with addiction is just another part of being a gentleman, like debt and gout. The clock downstairs chimes 3, then 4. You drift in and out of opium-hazed half-sleep, dreaming of being crushed by giant powder puffs while Dr. Hartwell drains your blood into a punch bowl. A rat scurries across the floor, probably heading for the kitchen, but sounding like a cavalry charge in the pre-dawn quiet. Your fire has completely died, and your breath forms visible clouds in the cold air. Dawn arrives with Thompson's discreet knock, ready to begin another day of systematic financial hemorrhaging. Your estate accounts, neglected during yesterday's travel ordeal, pile on your desk like paper accusations. The cost of maintaining your gentleman status would make Croesus weep. The townhouse mortgage, the country estate that produces nothing but debt, servants who outnumber actual family members by 3 to 1, and horses that eat better than most of London's working poor. Your man of business, Mr. Grimsby, arrives at 10 with the expression of someone delivering news of multiple deaths. He spreads ledgers across your desk like tarot cards predicting doom. The situation, my lord, has become pressing, he says, which is his polite way of saying you're careening toward bankruptcy with the momentum of a runaway carriage. The numbers swim before your eyes, each column of red ink representing another year of life expectancy lost to financial stress. The household expenses alone could support a small village. 27 servants, each requiring wages, livery, and food, though half of them seem to exist solely to serve the other half. Your cook requires 3 assistants to produce meals that are essentially poison. Your coachman needs 2 grooms for horses you rarely use, and there's someone called a necessary woman whose job you're afraid to investigate too closely. Then there's the clothing budget. A gentleman must have a minimum of 12 suits for various occasions, each costing enough to buy a modest house. The embroidery on your court suit alone employed 4 women for 6 months. Your tailor, displaying the natural sympathy of a creditor, has sent another bill with numbers that seem to have been selected by throwing dice. The note attached suggests, with menacing politeness, that payment would be most appreciated at his lordship's earliest convenience, and the entertaining expenses make your eyes water more than the powder. Last month's dinner party, the one where Lord Pemberton fell into the soup tureen, cost more than a working man makes in 5 years. The wine bill alone could have funded a small war. Your wine merchant has helpfully included a comparative chart showing that you consume more claret than the French embassy, which would be impressive if it weren't so financially catastrophic. Your gambling debts deserve their own ledger, which Grimsby produces with the air of a prosecutor presenting evidence. The neat columns record every disastrous night at the hazard table, every foolish bet at White's, every moment when wine and pride overcame mathematical probability. The total at the bottom seems impossible, like something from astronomy rather than accounting. Several gentlemen have inquired about payment, Grimsby mentions, which means you're one step away from either dueling or fleeing to the continent. The medical expenses provide their own special torture. Dr. Hartwell's bleeding and purging doesn't come cheap, and his mercury tonics cost more per ounce than gold. The apothecary's bill lists items that sound more like witchcraft than medicine: powder of vipers, tincture of mummy, spirit of skull. You're essentially paying premium prices to be slowly poisoned, which seems like adding insult to injury. Your wife's expenses occupy their own special category of fiscal hemorrhaging. Her milliner alone charges rates that would make a highway robber blush. The latest bill includes something called a shepherdess bonnet à la bergère that cost more than an actual shepherd makes in a lifetime. Her hairdresser, Monsieur Antoine, charges by the curl and apparently counts very carefully. The rouge and powder bill suggests she's painting not just her face, but possibly the entire house. Grimsby clears his throat, preparing for the killing blow. There's also the matter of your son's education. Ah, yes, young Charles at Eton, learning to be expensively useless, just like his father. The school fees would be merely outrageous if they covered actual education, but additional charges for extras include everything from candles to consume, while not studying, to fines for behavior that would be criminal if committed by the poor, but is merely high spirits when done by gentlemen's sons. Perhaps, Grimsby suggests delicately, his lordship might consider economies. The word hangs in the air like a threat. Economies, reduced circumstances, the dreaded slide toward genteel poverty where you maintain the appearance while the substance crumbles like your overtaxed digestive system. You'd rather face highway robbers again. At least they're honest about their theft. The meeting with Grimsby concludes with promises you both know you can't keep. Economies that won't happen, payments that will be delayed until the last possible moment before social ruin. You slump in your chair, feeling the weight of inherited debt, accumulated obligations, and the crushing certainty that you're the generation that will finally bring the family name crashing down. The laudanum bottle calls from your desk drawer, but it's only noon, and even you have standards, low standards, but standards nonetheless. Thompson appears with news that your mother-in-law has arrived for an extended visit, because apparently the universe hasn't finished with you yet. She sweeps into your study, trailing disapproval and enough perfume to fumigate a plague house. You look terrible, she announces, which is rich coming from someone whose face powder is so thick it's developing its own geological strata. Have you considered taking the waters at Bath? Bath, where invalids go to drink sulphurous water while pretending their organs aren't failing, where you'd spend even more money. You don't have to achieve the same slow death available at home for free. You make non-committal noises while she launches into a lecture about your failures as a husband, father, and general human being. The throbbing behind your left eye suggests an apoplectic fit might solve several problems at once. Luncheon provides no respite. Your mother in law holds court, criticizing everything from the soup, not French enough, to your posture, not straight enough, to your wife's complexion, not pale enough, suggesting insufficient lead paint. You mechanically consume food that tastes like expensive cardboard, while your digestive system sends up distress flares. The conversation revolves around people you don't know, doing things you don't care about, in places you can't afford to visit. The afternoon post brings more bills, more invitations to events that will generate more bills, and a letter from your son at Eton requesting additional funds for essential supplies. These turn out to be a new hunter, his third this year, and membership in a dining club where they apparently eat gold leaf. You draft a response explaining fiscal responsibility, then tear it up and write a bank draft instead. What's another drop in an ocean of debt? Evening approaches with its usual threats. Another dinner party, another night at the tables, another 8 hours of slowly poisoning yourself with rich food and poor wine. Your valet arrives to dress you for the evening, and you submit to the familiar torture. The clothes feel heavier today, or perhaps you're just getting weaker. The powder makes you sneeze, a violent explosion that sends white clouds everywhere and starts your nose bleeding. Richards pretends not to notice the blood drops on your cravat. In the mirror, you see what everyone else pretends not to, a man being crushed by the weight of his own existence. The lid paint can't quite hide the gray pallor. The rouge sits on your cheeks like a fever dream, and your eyes have that particular hollow look of someone who's forgotten what actual rest feels like. You're 43 years old and look 60, dressed like a peacock and dying like a dog. The evening progresses exactly as expected. Dinner at Lord Worthington's involves 16 courses of indigestible magnificence. You lose moderately at cards, only £200 tonight, practically a victory. The conversation revolves around the usual topics: who's bankrupt, who's cuckolded, who's dying of whatever fashionable disease is making the rounds. Lady Pemberton mentions that Sir Edmund's widow is selling his effects, and everyone pretends not to be calculating what they might acquire cheaply from his estate. By 3 in the morning, you're home again, being undressed by your valet while trying not to fall asleep standing up. Your wife, who retired hours ago with a headache, has left a note suggesting you sleep in your dressing room to avoid disturbing her. This suits you perfectly. At least there, you can moan in peace as your body processes another day's worth of systematic abuse. Into bed you collapse, reaching automatically for the laudanum bottle. Tomorrow will bring more of the same: the powder, the lead, the bleeding, the bills, the endless social obligations that drain your health and wealth in equal measure. You're trapped in a prison of privilege, slowly dying from the very lifestyle you're killing yourself to maintain. The irony would be amusing if you had the energy for amusement. The clock chimes 4 as the opium finally takes hold, blurring the edges of your dystopian existence. Tomorrow Thompson will wake you to start again, but for now, you drift into dreams where you're not a gentleman, where you can breathe without a cravat, eat without ceremony, and exist without slowly poisoning yourself for the approval of people you don't even like. As you sink deeper into your feather mattress, that nightly battle with comfort, the laudanum works its familiar magic. The aches in your joints begin to fade, like morning mist retreating before a gentle sun. Your breathing slows, no longer fighting against the restrictive memory of your stays and cravat. The bedbugs still march their tiny campaigns across your skin, but even they seem less urgent now, more like distant drummers than immediate invaders. The sounds of London continue outside your window, some distant carriage clattering home, a cat fight in the alley, the night soil men beginning their unspeakable work, but they blend into a sort of urban lullaby. Even your stomach, that constant complainant, settles into quiet gurgles of resignation. Your body, after another day of fashionable torture, finally begins to forgive you. Perhaps tomorrow you'll skip the bleeding. Perhaps you'll forget just one social call, take tea instead of wine with breakfast, or even, radical thought, suggest to your wife that you both retire to the country for a month. These are the drowsy fantasies of a gentleman sliding toward sleep, knowing full well that tomorrow will bring the same elaborate dance with death, the same expensive pageantry of self-destruction. But for now, in this precious space between today's torments and tomorrow's obligations, you can rest. The powder will wash off eventually. The lead paint might not kill you this year, and your debts, well, your debts will outlive you, but that's your son's problem now. Your breathing deepens into something approaching actual sleep, and London's greatest mercy, temporary unconsciousness, finally claims you. Sweet dreams, dear listener, and be grateful for your modern bed, your clean water, and your blessed freedom from mercury tonics. Rest well in your century, where fashion might be questionable but rarely fatal.